Okay, let's see if those corrupt pricks at Formula One will try and block this one using copyright. Part 3 of the safety car tutorials will be added soon once I've edited out the copyrighted elements that prevent it from being seen by anybody. But this is actually going to be part 4. We're still in 2012, the final race of the 2012 season. The title is still in the balance. So we'll have a playthrough of this in small sections and play through what happens and what Sky Sports, the commentators of Brundle and Crofty, know back in 2012. So we're on lap 22. Fernando Alonso, team radio.
There's too much debris on the track.
Fernando's complaining that there's too much debris on the track.
And it's been there since the opening lap.
And that debris been there since lap 1.
Guys having just to tiptoe around. We've seen a lot of debris, haven't we, at this first corner? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's you wouldn't want somebody hitting that and that flying up and blinding somebody potentially. If it went through a driver's helmet, that could kill somebody. So that should not have been left there for 22 laps.
Evidence there now. What bit of car and whose bit of car has that come off?
Fernando fancies a safety car at this stage of the proceedings.
Well, there you go. It is something that drivers will seek. Let's be clear about this. Because a safety car, let's have a look. Why would Fernando love a safety car?
65 seconds off the lead. He's thinking about it, isn't he?
So he's 65 seconds off the lead and he knows that the safety car will bunch everybody up. So the drivers give the message complaining that things are unsafe and we need this sorting out.
Right.
So there is a lot of damage, there is a lot of debris. Punctures can be...
Well, maybe that's how Nico Rosberg got his puncture. Let's just have a look here.
Okay, so again, it's a risk for puncture. There's lots of things that can be problems.
Yeah, certainly. I think he'd already got the puncture.
Yeah, he had. Look, it was already, the right rear was already going down, wasn't it?
There you go. This is the problem of having debris on the track.
Jensen came up behind him. And the problem you have when you come into your garage like that is the chassis and suspension is so stiff on a Formula 1 car that if the right rear...
So, they do put the safety car out. We're on lap 23 of 71. Now, you would think just 23 laps into a race, it's unlikely that the leaders will have made it round and started lapping back markers by that point in time. But Brazil is a short lap and they managed to do so. So we're going to play some of this through. I'm going to pause the recording here and I'm going to just try and condense the amount of footage that I show you down to a minimum to reduce the risk of it being blocked on copyright. So I'll play you through the key points.
The right rear's down.
Safety car, Martin. Yeah. So Fernando Alonso, whether it was a ploy to get the safety car out or a genuine concern, has resulted in Bernd Mailander coming out of the pits.
So Hulkenberg and Button will surely pit immediately. That'll allow them all to bunch up.
So as is fairly standard, as we're all aware, as the safety car procedure goes through, those cars that can dive into the pits to get fresh tyres because that they can effectively make relatively cheap pit stops. They lose less time. They can effectively make free pit stops, not lose track position or lose minimal track positions by diving in and out the pits because all the other cars travelling around the track are having to move at a slower speed, which means they don't cover that same ground in the time them cars are in the pits, so they can go in and get back out on the pits before the other cars have managed to come round in time. So that's why they do it, and that's what we will always see.
Here in Brazil, 9th safety car affected race at Interlagos. It's the 7th I should say in the last 11 runnings here, and just
So again, as I show you in the third instalment of the Formula One safety car situation, back in 2012, the statistics about the safety car and the number of laps they take at each track, the commentators seem to be far more aware of what them statistics are back then than they were in 2021. They're telling you, back in Singapore, every safety car has taken about 4 laps in Singapore. It's strange that as the sport evolves, as we've come towards the present day, that information isn't presented in the same way. There's a reason for that. The more you can withhold information so that people aren't educated, the more you can convince them of different possibilities. The more you can introduce the notion of jeopardy, keep people on the edge of their seat. Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? Are we going to see this? Are we going to see that? See, if you tell people right from the outset, this is going to take 4 or 5 laps out of the race, or this is going to take 5 or 6 laps out of the race, okay, people know that. They just remain fairly calm, watching the process through to the point where the situation's dealt with, the procedures are all done correctly, and then you start racing again. It's just really, really straightforward. But instead, what we get from Sky Sports, what we get from Brundle and Crofty is, wow, and we're seeing this now, and we're seeing this now, and are we going to see this, and are we going to see that, and they could be doing this, and they could, and all of it is just hype. It's entire hype. But the kids that are watching the show these days, they're buying it. They're buying it. They're feeding on that bullshit. And they're getting hyped by it, and they're thinking, "Oh yeah, this is brilliant." No, this is just simply the rules of the sport. This is simply the procedure of how you deal with a safety incident. Yes, when you get going again, it reintroduces the bunched up field aspect, so cars are much closer together again and have the opportunity to challenge each other for position in a way that these gaps had spread out prior to the safety car being introduced. But all along the way, Sky Sports are doing a massive hype job in making people kind of, getting people really hyped up to think what's going to happen. And in doing so, they're lying. They're actually lying about the rules of the sport so that there's a massive percentage of Formula One fans just don't understand it. And you can see from the comment section, there's a load of people in the comment section, and I will refer to them as twats because, let's face it, when they just keep saying the same thing time and time again, and you can evidence the same thing time and time again, and you explain it time and time again, and yet they still keep saying the same thing in opposition time and time again, well, that makes them a twat. So these twats keep jumping up in the comment section saying the wrong things, but they're saying them things because they've been conditioned to believe that to be true. That's a problem. When the media is lying to people and miseducating people, that is a problem. That is a huge problem, and this is something that this world needs to start waking up to, because people are being conditioned. They're being conditioned with entirely the wrong things, and those wrong things are there and done to perpetrate the agenda of those people with monetary interests. Liberty Media make money out of the show through attracting an audience, and they attract the audience through hyping the situation up. Bernie Ecclestone, the previous commercial rights holder of the show, but it's not a show, it's a sport, and Bernie Ecclestone owned the commercial rights to the sport, which meant he could sell the TV footage of this sport. Companies who wanted to attach their brands to the sport through sponsorship, Bernie would get a cut of all of that. He then sold them rights to Liberty Media. But Bernie the billionaire, did it in such a way whereby he looked at the product, looked at the sport, and determined how he could make the product a saleable asset, how he could increase the value, increase the interest in it. And the strategy used is to hype the thing up, introduce the notion of jeopardy. That would attract interest. Now, that's not what true sport is. Interest in true sport happens because people are interested in sport. You don't have to introduce fake jeopardy into sport because people will watch it if they're interested in it. Some sports naturally attract an audience, like football. Football, people will go and watch a game of football, and if it ends in a 0-0 draw, it ends in a 0-0 draw. That's what it is. You don't go, oh, it's a 0-0 draw. Let's just have a penalty shootout and see who wins. No, it's a 0-0 draw. That's what it is. You know what you're watching, and that's what it is. And there's some sports they don't attract large audiences because less people are interested in that sort of thing. But you don't go bastardizing, and don't be offended by that word because it's a valid word. You don't go bastardizing a sport, taking away sporting fairness just to create a show out of it, because then that's not authentic sport. But that is what Bernie Ecclestone went along the lines of doing, and now Liberty Media have taken that a step further by fixing outcomes of this sport. And then what they'll do, they'll bring into the notion, they'll even try and make it a debate. Oh, well, we need to decide, is this a sport or is it a show? Well, it's a sport. You broadcast it on Sky Sports. It's reported about in the sports section of all media. You see, wrestling, which apparently may at some point in its history have been a sport, people understand that it's not a sport now. Wrestling is a show. Wrestling's a pantomime. Okay, it's scripted. They're athletes. Don't get me wrong. To be a wrestler, you've got athletic ability. But what you're not seeing is authentic competition. Authentic competition is what sport is. And with Formula One, they are skewing it. They are introducing, the safety car in itself. The notion of one competitor crashing or suffering a mechanical failure, then resulting in the fact that you have probably raced half of the race distance, gained big advantages that you've earned over other competitors, and all of a sudden, just because somebody else has crashed, your advantages and everything you've worked for just gets wiped out. Well, is that fair to the competitors? Of course it isn't. Absolutely not fair. But that is how they've chosen to deal with it. And what that does, that reintroduces the notion of jeopardy into an event that some people may have become a little bit detached from because they can see that their favourite may not be winning it. But if we have a safety car, it reintroduces the excitement. So that's the notion. That's the method that they've chosen to deal with things. There's pros and cons of it. We don't need to go into it now particularly. But ultimately, with that being the case, you still have set procedures, and you still have to do it in a way that complies with sporting fairness to all competitors. And we know that Abu Dhabi 2021 absolutely did not comply with that. And the sport, that being the sport of Formula One, which is owned in terms of the marketing rights by Liberty Media and is governed by the FIA, and Sky Sports is the contracted broadcaster, the entire sport just validated the outcome that was manufactured. And we know those of us that are decent people, that have got integrity, that we know that that's not authentic and it's wrong. And it's criminal, actually, what they've done, but there's a lot of people will not understand the fact that it's a criminal act because the world's media has never broken down the situation to expose that it's a criminal act. I am trying to expose that, but in doing so, I'm having the content that I produce to evidence it limited. It seems to be being blocked or suppressed from reaching the visibility to the masses. So we have to find a way of making more and more people eventually see what really took place. But it's challenging, and we'll keep going with it. I've talked a lot more than I wanted to do because I wanted this to be the fourth instalment of what truly happens with the safety car. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and just show you some of what took place during that safety car period in Brazil 2012. And already at this stage, we're on lap 24. Cars had been lapped. So I'm going to show you what took place.
Berg exits the pit ahead of Jenson Button and maintains the lead.
So Hulkenberg was the leader. Jenson Button was in second place at this stage of the race. They've pitted. They maintain the lead, but the safety car has been deployed. It's probably picked up other cars. So when these come out on track, those other cars will be released past the safety car. These will be the first cars behind the safety car, with any lapped cars having to hold back. Once the safety car train has bunched, it's likely then that they'll send the marshals out onto the track, because they're like, okay, we've now got this safe window, we've got the cars under control. You're not going to get cars flying past you every few seconds that you're not expecting. We've made this situation safe. We've got to a point where all the cars, we know where they are. There's going to be a safe window to allow a marshal to get onto the track to clear that. That's the process that they work to. Okay.
So the safety car will have to release quite a lot of cars and pick these pair up. I believe they will still lead the Grand Prix.
You'll see this picture on lap 24. This is Paul de Resta, which is Hulkenberg's teammate at that time. He's just been waved past the safety car. Okay, this is before the safety car train has bunched, because anybody that's not the leader gets waved past the safety car initially, and so that first car becomes the race leader. So I'll play this bit through. This isn't the leader. This is the leader here. This is Hulkenberg, and so you'll see what happens. The safety car over here has got its green light illuminated there, which means the cars can go by him.
And allied to that, an excellent stop by Force India.
So that Ferrari goes by, and then the leader will be picked up by the safety car.
Maintained Hulkenberg in the lead.
Thanks ever so much, Ted. And finally, the safety car picks up.
And you can see the green light has gone to red. Okay, so now the safety car is on track with the leader behind. There are lapped cars in situ. So I'm going to pause this and find the next bit of footage which is going to be relevant. Right, this is pretty key. They cut to race control. So we've got Bernie Eccleston. No, not, well, he's not Bernie Eccleston. What I'm talking about, Charlie Whiting. Okay, Charlie Whiting is this guy here. I believe this could be Herbie Blash. Okay, sat next to him. Baldy over here, this dude. Now, I don't know his name, but in the 2019 or 2020 season, when I've done one of my videos where Michael Massey was race director, this guy was sat next to Michael Massey. So it pretty much seems like it's exactly the same bloke. I'm going to get two freeze frames and compare them, but I'm pretty confident that this guy is the same guy that sat next to Michael Massey. This is the guy that sat next to these two in 2012, and if he's been in this position ever since, he's been there with however many years of experience to this point. There's two guys sat over here, there's a guy behind them, there's a guy with headphones here. This is FIA race control. How many people are employed in FIA race control? How many people have got years and years of experience? They've overseen safety car deployments. They've seen these situations. They know how they work. And yet, Michael Massey is the one that made the human error, apparently. It's 10 people or more at race control. They all know how the procedure works. And yet there's a scapegoat.
Back to the pits again, and Charlie Whiting, the race director, and Herbie Blash alongside him. Plenty.
So there's two guys back here, isn't there? This guy has moved along there. You know, we've got 5 guys sat in a row. This guy that's moved back there, and there's 2 guys at the back. So there's, there's plenty there in race control.
To examine.
Well, it definitely suited Alonso to have a safety car. That's why he was on the radio. But frankly, he was right, wasn't he?
Okay, so we're talking about Alonso still, but frankly, he was right. Why?
There is an extreme amount of debris on the track after the various incidents, and it's important because if you pick up a puncture coming through that last corner onto the pit straight, you can have an almighty shunt in there.
Okay, so again, having debris on the track is extremely dangerous in Formula One because you've got cars travelling of up to 200 miles an hour. If you have a blowout at that sort of speed, that car can lose control and somebody can end up badly damaged, if not dead. Okay, so it is extremely important that they consider the safety of the competitors. They can consider the safety of everybody in and around that track. So it's important they deal with that as a health and safety situation. You can't just ignore these things and just go racing without considering that. So look at this picture. This is our cheap friend Adrian Newey, called a genius, but it's all depending on how we consider things. But he's looking at these monitors, and what do we see here? We see tracker view. So we see each of the Formula One cars and where they are located around that track. So this technology was available to the teams, which would come through from the FIA, no doubt, because let's face it, if teams have got this technology and you're the FIA, you'd be foolish not to be using it. So all this time, since however long before 2012, this sort of thing has existed. It's not new. And now we're looking at the McLaren team, and we've got data view. This information is accessible to all of the teams, and therefore it's going to be accessible to everybody in race control at the FIA. So with it being the final Grand Prix of the season, listen to what Crofty has to say.
Here's how it stands in the championship. Fernando Alonso running in 4th place, not enough for him.
So Fernando Alonso running in 4th place. That's not enough for him
to be on the podium. Sebastian Vettel right behind him in 5th place. The good news for Vettel is that after that first lap incident, he's got himself back up to 5th. The good news for Alonso is that this safety car has now meant he's been able to close up on the McLaren.
So the safety car's good news for Alonso in the championship battle.
In front of him that really were getting away.
But as much as it helps Alonso, it helps Vettel too. It's brought him right back in. And that's the bit where I think Sebastian turning in there was.
So this is the 2012 Formula 1 World Championship going down to the last race of the season. And on the first lap, the contender, Sebastian Vettel, spins and loses his front wing, putting debris all across the track.
Was a much greater than 50-50 chance of there being a car on the inside of the track there. If you turn in in those conditions, you're going to find yourself meeting another car.
Is that?
It's incredible the way you can explain that to people, Martin. Because through the years of watching Formula 1, I've heard you explain these things. And you have been our education for many fans of the sport. And I know that the way you describe things now, those things that involve Max Verstappen, you do not explain with anywhere near the level of authenticity that you used to explain things to fans. It's like the rules of the sport are completely different now. And your interpretation is almost the polar opposite of how you used to describe things. And in all of these things, Max does never seem to do anything wrong. I wonder why that is. I wonder why all of a sudden everything you have to commentate and condition people to believe is to validate and make out that somehow Max Verstappen is now this greatest of all time, the best we've ever seen. Because that's not congruent with everything we've ever heard before in this sport for anybody that's watched the sport for any more than 5 years. So let's have a listen as they're just completing lap 26. Let's have a listen to what Crofty's saying.
So as we complete another lap behind the safety car, Timo Glock, Jean-Eric Verne, Vitaly Petrov and Michael Schumacher and Heikki Kovalainen and Charles Pic and
He's listing out the drivers.
Pedro De La Rosa and Narain Carter-Kane and Nico Rosberg can now all overtake and
so race control lapped cars may now overtake, and it lists them out there. There's 7 there listed, and Crofty has gone through who they are.
unlap themselves. We have lost from this race Romain Grosjean, who went off at quite high speed.
So they're going to be released on lap 27. They should all, because it's the start of lap 27, they should all have passed the safety car by the end of this. I'll show you as we approach the end of the race, end of the lap, to show you what's going on. So what you're seeing now, there's in the bottom corner, one of the cars is there, and these are the other lapped cars passing the safety car right now. Okay, this is as we're heading down towards turn 4 in Brazil. Okay, and I would say this is fairly conclusive to say this looks like it's the last of the lapped cars that's been released. So we're on lap 27. So what we know about the rules is that lap 28 has to be that mandatory safety car lap to give them the opportunity to catch the back of the pack, which means we go racing on lap 29. Bear in mind, they got the instruction that they are allowed to pass the safety car right at the beginning of lap 27, which means they've got at least half of lap 27 already, and then they've got lap 28. So they've got a lap and a half to get to the back of the safety car safety car train, whichever you want to call it. So that is why the procedure is what it is. That is why they say the safety car will return to the pits at the end of the following lap. Because if you can release these lapped cars early enough in the given lap that they're released on, then they get more than one lap. They get a lap and a half with which, and that's often enough to get them around to the back of the pack. A lap and a half will get them somewhere close. But if they only get by at the end of a lap, just one lap may not be enough. And that is where the 15.3 in the regulations comes in, where the race director has it within his discretion to keep the safety car lapping to give them that additional time to actually make it round to the back of the pack to restore sporting fairness. I'm going to pause it here and then again try and show you the picture of what's going on when the next important thing happens. I'm going to just play you this bit because this is Brundle talking about the two championship rivals, which are Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. Now, Vettel is the person just being warned by his race engineer, and this is what Brundle has to say about it.
He's just been warned on the radio by his engineer Rocky. Be careful, people do funny things to warm their tyres up, and of course
So he's being warned to watch out for Fernando Alonso during this safety car period, and Brundle's actually talking about this.
Man in front of him is his championship rival, so in other words, treat Alonso as he's warming his brakes and tyres like the back end of a donkey.
So it's effectively saying, just be careful that the other guy doesn't take you out because he'll end up winning the championship. They're openly talking about that now. And yet in those last 4 races of the 2021 season, we saw Brazil, where Verstappen ran Hamilton off the track. And Hamilton had to win those last 4 races. Were they talking about the fact that Verstappen treat him like the back end of a donkey because if he takes you out, you've lost the championship? Did they speak about Verstappen like that? In Saudi, at turn 1, he ran Lewis Hamilton off the track. Did they talk about him like that? In Saudi, where he brake tested Lewis Hamilton, did they talk about Max Verstappen like that? In Abu Dhabi, on lap 1, where Verstappen late lunged up the inside and ran Lewis off the track, and they vilified Lewis Hamilton, saying that Lewis cut the corner. Well, he had to, if he'd have stayed on track, he'd have got rammed into and might have been taken out of that race. So he had to avoid the collision. And as a result, you're not going to lose position. You will cut the corner. You should not be having to lose a place because somebody basically is going to drive their car into you, and unless you get off the track, there's going to be an accident. But how did they describe that?
Yes, an aggressive little mule in that prancing horse. And there's his teammate.
How times change and how they describe the competitors. So this is the safety car completing lap 27.
Again.
Hulkenberg's about to.
And going on to lap 28. Now this then should be the mandatory safety car lap. And now we're seeing the safety car still out there and they're finishing lap 28.
As well, but Kamui Kobayashi scores 8 points.
And now we're on to lap 29. So what's going on? They've completed the mandatory safety car lap and the safety car is still out there. What are the rules? Is the purpose of releasing those lapped cars to get them out of the way? They've had a lap and a half to get out of the way. What is the true purpose? The true purpose is to try and get them all the way around to the back of the pack so that the entire pack is nose to tail with equivalent gaps between all the competitors. Doesn't always happen like that. That bit is discretionary. But that is the purpose of the safety car rules. That is the purpose of giving the race director that discretion. I'm just going to play this bit through because if we remember before the lapped cars were released, the last car on the lead lap was a Ferrari. So if we just play this bit through.
Season as Nico Hülkenberg maybe struggled a bit at the start, took some time to get back into racing after his year as the Friday driver at Force India, but he's been very impressive.
It's just gone by now, and so it looks like the lapped cars still haven't caught the back of the pack. We'll see.
Martin, you got your breath back now?
I have.
Safety car
interlude.
Safety car is coming in. Stand by for a little more action.
So, given that little bit of extra time, they're now saying safety car in. So I'll try and cut back to the footage if we can get a view closer to the end of this lap where those released cars are in relation to the last that Ferrari we're talking about.
Here in Interlagos, the title showdown that is giving us the best thriller since Michael Jackson went into a recording studio. It is.
So, coming to the end of lap 29, here's that Ferrari, and here's those released lapped cars that are on his tail now.
Still got to watch out for him. I'm sure at the first turn, the safety car will peel off, and Nick.
And so what we've got left now is the race is about to restart. So lap 30 would be the resumption, having achieved sporting fairness to all competitors by giving those lapped cars the opportunity to catch the back of the
Nico Hülkenberg will lead the train of cars up the hill to complete lap 29, and we can go racing once again here in Sao Paulo. Jenson Button is probably a bit too far back to make a move into the first turn, but already behind Kobayashi has got a...
And there they all are. You can see them stretching back up to the top of the screen.
Great start on Vettel. Mark Webber makes it 3 abreast going into the centre S's. Kobayashi on the inside.
So, okay, that's proven the point that I was trying to make on the safety car aspect. I'll just try and cut to the end of this race for a second. Oh, just a little note on this little image here. This is how cars can go around corners, sometimes even 3 abreast. They give each other some room. Okay, now Webber's going to go off the track here, but what you don't see is this car on the inside running across on this line here, completely running this car out of room. It doesn't come across here to this side of the track, meaning this car's got nowhere to go. And what you don't see is this car here cutting across for the apex, chopping off the nose of that car. Alright? Because that's how you race with Formula 1. All of a sudden with Max Verstappen, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing cars respect one another for safe competition. It's basically, if you don't yield, he will crash.
Kobayashi on the inside, Webber's off the track. Kobayashi.
But this is how the sport has been allowed to evolve, because they've enabled that style of driving, and what they've done, they've conditioned these new brand of fans to the sport. These fans growing up playing computer games whereby you can crash and your car just gets put back on the track and there's no consequence. These kids think that you can drive like that in Formula 1 and it's not a problem. But it is. It's a big problem. So, lap 70 of 71. Sebastian Vettel is in 6th position at this moment in time. I think Alonso's a bit higher up the field. It just cut to this screen after a replay, so don't know.
You don't see an awful lot in your mirrors in these conditions. Michael certainly didn't see Kobayashi coming, but I think it was just about a bona fide overtake. But no grip when he got there. Ambition well ahead of adhesion.
And Button just slowing down a touch in the last lap and a half just to make sure of this a bit. Getting a lot slippier, which is why we're seeing these yellow flags popping up and people sliding on the road.
Oh, Lewis Hamilton's out again. Not suffering the best of luck, is he?
The lead down to 18 seconds now as we head down to Ted again.
An absolutely electric atmosphere down here in the pits, and McLaren.
Oh, and what did we see? We see Nicholas Latifi crashing, and that'll be a safety car. Are we going to see a grandstand finish? Oh, you don't have to release the lapped cars. You can. Are we going to see this last racing lap? Are we going to see a one-lap shootout between a car on 44-lap-old hard tyres and one on fresh softs? Or are we just going to see a safety car finish and the World Championship be decided by the cars finishing under a safety car? Let's have a look.
In the team boss Martin Whitmarsh.
Ted, let me interrupt. Paul di Resta has crashed right at the final turn here. Double wave yellows. It's a safety car. We're going to finish this race. We're going to finish this championship season behind the safety car because of a crash for Paul di Resta and a.
What more do I need to say? See you next time.